Just seconds ago, the markets closed for the day, and it was ugly. There was a big sell-off. At one point, the Dow was down more than 1,000 points. We're going to have more on the market in just a moment. Also ahead today, President Trump announcing a change in his cabinet. The president says he's replacing Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem with Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin. Noem will have a new role, which will formally be announced this weekend. In the meantime, what will the transition look like? And what could it mean for the Republicans with an empty Senate seat? Also today, Iran calling for Trump's blood. Radical Iranian clerics are firing off hostile words as the regime keeps firing missiles. Right now, President Trump is at the White House. This hour, he is hosting Major League Soccer champions, but we will monitor if the president says anything about Iran or his cabinet change. Also happening this hour, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is about to speak. Hegseth is at CENTCOM headquarters in Tampa. We're going to be taking Hegseth live when he begins to talk. Also today, the United States is debuting some powerful new weapons on the battlefield, including lasers. One new weapon the U.S. is debuting is a weapon that is stronger than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It is aptly called the Doomsday missile. It has yet to be deployed, but it has just passed a big test. But first, it's day 6 in the war, and it's after midnight in Tehran, where its skies have been lit up by airstrikes. The skies over Israel also lit up by Israel's intercepting missiles, thanks to the Iron Dome. In Tel Aviv, sirens have been sounding each day. They just went off. Middle East correspondent Zach Anders joins me from Tel Aviv, where it is 11:01 p.m. Zach?
Yeah, Greta, we just had to our south another use of a cluster warhead, and we'll get you some video here. Hopefully, maybe later in the show, you'll be able to see what this looks like. The munition or the warhead itself is breaking up into 2 dozen smaller pieces. And watching it come in, you can see in the sky, even though there's, it's a black sky, so you don't have something to contrast against the background. You don't have that frame of reference with the objects that you are seeing in the sky. But we could tell it's coming into the south, and based on how far spaced apart each and every one of these red glowing dots was in the sky, it's a wide area. You're talking about dozens of square miles on the ground where these cluster warheads, as they break up at 60,000 feet, could be dropping down. So right now, that's about 2 minutes old with the potential impacts on the ground here. We're going to wait and see what is taking shape with Israel's ambulance service once they know if there's been any calls in. The remarkable element here is that the Pentagon is telling us that 80% of these ballistic missile launches are down 80% since day one of this war. And we certainly see that this latest attack, about 3-4 minutes old now, looks like just 2 missiles, but again, one of those a cluster warhead, so that could be a pretty catastrophic situation on the ground here. About 15 minutes before that, we only saw 2 ballistic missiles launched, and it looked like they went out over the Mediterranean. So we're watching this as the most important thing to remember here is, and don't touch the most important thing to remember here is that this long-range missile fire might be quitting, or at least not as heavy as what we've expected over the course of a war like this. But the short-range ballistic missile fire very much intact. Within the last few hours, Kuwaiti officials claim that their air defenses have repelled another attack in Bahrain. Officials there say that fires at an oil facility are now under control. And just about 2 hours ago, sirens going off again in Dubai. Missiles and drones sending hundreds of thousands of people there running for shelter. What we're waiting to see primarily from the next 24 hours, I would say, is once these long-range ballistic missile launchers are taken out, when they lose that capability to fire at Israel with their long-range missiles, is there some kind of tempo change with the short and medium-range ballistic missiles that they're firing with different equipment on the ground that they're firing at some of these? You see something?
Interceptor.
An outgoing interceptor. And additional alarms here in the north as Hezbollah has been firing in northern Israel at the exact same time. Greta, the point I want to conclude with is just that the short-range ballistic missile fire, they have a lot of those missiles, and they have the ability and capability to fire a lot of those short-range missiles at the Gulf states, Dubai, Bahrain, Kuwait, and we're hearing from regional sources that in places especially like Dubai, they were firing. We got another outgoing And sirens coming off here again for Tel Aviv. Well, this turned into suddenly quite an active night. I only saw one outgoing interceptor. We're being told by the regional sources around the Gulf states that they fear that Dubai put such an emphasis on shooting down everything at the start of the war that they may be running short on their interceptor stockpile. I see 3 coming in now. One looks like it's heading straight for us. No, make that 4. All right, that one's getting brighter. That one's breaking apart. Some of this is what you're seeing here is taking place 50, 60,000 feet up in the air. 2 of those interceptors are racing towards an object that we cannot see, or a missile that we can't see, but 2 outgoing interceptors. Look at the streak. I think you can probably pick up the contrast to that white trail of smoke. Look at the path that it takes. Finn, are you able to show, can you see the smoke on camera from that one closest to us? Greta, are you able to see that on the screen?
We can see some of it. Not right now, but we do see dots every once in a while, which reflect that.
Yeah, what's remarkable about that is because those interceptors have little small boosters on them, and they can change, they're very agile, they can change direction, and so it's always strange to see the path they took and the corrections that they make as they stream up into the sky. It looks like for now we are clear from the incoming, and there are still just a remarkable that we know how dangerous these things can be, but I tell you what, I'm looking down below at the street. There are still people sitting at the cafe that haven't moved from their table, and 2 big booms overhead.
Zach, we still hear sirens, and you say it's pretty much over. I can still hear sirens. I guess now it's stopped.
The sky is clear for now. You're probably still going to hear my phone jingle.
Yeah, let me ask you about that. Those chimes
tone
on your phone, we kept hearing the chimes on your phone. That seemed to precede by just a short period of time the sirens.
Yeah, you usually get the alert on your phone first before you'll get the over-the-air, the air raid siren that everybody can hear downtown.
Have you seen the video?
Alert system here on the phone.
Have you seen the video of the missile that struck about 10 minutes ago? I think we have it. I don't know if you have ability to see what we can. We can put that video up.
I do. Yeah, that's my video here. That's what I was sending. Yeah, look at that. I mean, that's enough to make your blood run cold when you're looking at dozens of those smaller warheads. That's a cluster warhead. It's at 60,000 feet. It was not intercepted. And then the main body of the warhead breaks apart into 24 smaller pieces. Now, we don't know if every single one of those things is loaded with ordnance, if every single one of them is a bomb, essentially. But they're designed to be, right? And what we've noticed is some of these impact sites, it does not look like they're loaded to their max capacity. I mean, each one of these could have like 5-6 pounds of explosive and then the kinetic energy as they impact the earth. But we're not seeing a lot of what seems to be, the cluster warheads loaded, packed full of explosives. It looks like kinetic impacts, that they're maybe duds or that they're just not being loaded with explosives. So when you see the damage on the ground, that's just from the force of it falling out of the sky.
And Zach, you said that 80% of the, that's down 20%, I guess, the number of missiles that were being sent, the long-range missiles. Any explanation for that? Are they running out of supplies, or are they backing up, getting ready to do it again?
Well, they're running out of the missile launchers. The mobile missile, they're called TELs. The trucks, they look like they could be a regular freight or semi-truck. But inside, they've got the missile itself and hydraulics that will lift it straight up. And I was doing a lot of research. It's really fascinating how they designed these things because it's launching a rocket into space. You know, at the ground, that's a lot of force and energy and heat, but they're able to reuse those things. They've got special tires so the rubber doesn't melt, but that thing shoots straight up, and then they'll try and reload it with another missile to do it all over again. That's the most important part of this puzzle for them, is if they lose their mobile launch posts, which the Israelis think they've knocked out hundreds of them by now, and that they're probably down to their last few dozen. Once they lose those ballistic missile launch posts, the trucks that haul those out in the countryside and then try and fire, move locations so that they're a little bit more hidden and the Israelis or the Americans can't see where that launch took place, or by the time that they do, that truck's already gone. Well, they're getting really good at taking those things out. So once they lose them, the ballistic missile stockpile, the long-range missiles that could fire at Israel, once they lose those launchers, it's not going to matter how many ballistic missiles the long range they have left, because they're going to have no means to fire them.
Zach Anders, and I should say this, as you can tell, you're an experienced war correspondent because you described the night as quite an active night. And that's not exactly what I'd say if I were wearing a helmet and getting missiles fired my way, but you can tell you're experienced.
I mean, this helmet won't
that.
do much help, Greta, but
I know.
right.
I know. But quite an active night. It's just, you know, I note that that's how you describe it. Anyway, Zach Anders, be safe and thank you.
Thanks, Greta.
And the markets have just closed for the day. 11 minutes ago, there was a major sell-off. The Dow closed down about 780 points. That's 1.61% in the red. The S&P 500 closing down 0.57%, and the Nasdaq down about 0.26%. What spooked investors today? The Iran war and the price of oil. And for the first time in more than a year, the price of a barrel of oil pushed above $80. According to AAA, the national average for a gallon of regular gas is now $3.25. That is an increase of 27 cents from a week ago. Financial markets analyst and author of Planet Ponzi, Mitch Feierstein, joins me. Nice to talk to you, sir. And tell me your thoughts on this. Obviously, it's disturbing to see the markets get so rattled. They weren't rattled for the last 2 days, which was surprising, but now they are.
Right. Gasoline futures are up substantially. I mean, they traded at a 52-week high today, up at around $2.70. Both oil markets, as you said, we have two different oil markets that people should be looking at. The WTI market, which is the market that governs prices in America, traded above $80 for the first time in a year, as you mentioned. And then there's the Brent market, Brent crude oil, that they hear a lot about, which is the benchmark pricing mechanism for the other parts of the world. WTI is the Texas oil that we price our gasoline off of. So that is most important for consumers here. I think the stock market, I think, was fundamentally overvalued to begin with. Tech stocks were too high. There's some credit events going on. Stocks like Goldman Sachs, since the end of January, have dropped $150, close to 15%. That's a bit of an issue. The stock market did come back a bit today, but I'm a little skeptical because I think valuations are too high. And I also think, getting to the oil picture, I think the complacency in the oil market by traders is way too high. I think the risks are to the upside, and I think we'll see $100 oil because of what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz.
What about Venezuela? Is there a long-term, short-term effect of that? Because they've got the largest oil reserve in the world. And of course, things have changed so dramatically in Venezuela since January 1st.
I think Venezuela is a good part of the picture for President Trump to be involved there first, because now we've got a foothold in Venezuela. But I think that those reserves that they have are going to be difficult for the Americans to extract. And I think that that's going to take time to get going. However, I do think that the domestic oil and drill, baby, drill is going to help America. The short-term pain that we're going to see as oil creeps higher, because the Strait of Hormuz, and I don't know if this has been explained properly, is only 21 miles long, and there are 8 countries in that region that put their oil through there, which is 25% of the global oil supply per day, which has been closed now since Sunday for all intents and purposes, which means, 110 million barrels of oil is the consumption number per day. 25 million out of that per day taken out is a big deal. So prices have to go higher. And look, you can have, like that map that we just saw is a really good illustration of telling you those guys could come in a rowboat with a missile to blow up any escort. And that's going to be a big problem, because they really have to eliminate all the terrorist threats. And as you know, Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism that there is. So I think that we have a big problem getting ships through the strait, because nobody's going to, in their right mind, I'm a risk manager. Nobody in their right mind is going to insure those boats. Those boats cost 100 million plus. I mean, the tankers, it's large oil tankers, cost 100 million plus, up to 200 million. And then you're putting 4 million barrels of oil. So say it's $100 a barrel. That's $400 million worth of cargo, 200 million for the kit. So that's 600 million at risk if you're a ship owner, and no insurance company is going to insure you. So if a missile hits you and sinks that ship, it's going to take you 6 years to rebuild it. And there's a huge waiting list to get those rebuilt. So nobody wants to take that risk on board. So I can understand that, and it's going to cause problems and price hikes. Europe is already in a heavy recession right now. Their oil prices, because LNG, which is liquefied natural gas, most of it goes to Europe, and most of the oil through the strait goes to China. So these countries are the ones that are going to be hit the hardest, and they have record energy prices in Europe right now. And I only see that going higher. I see Germany, which has been in a recession for 3 years, having a worse problem with record bankruptcies. So these guys are going to get hit the hardest. The United States does have buffers, and we have fracking here. So energy independence, which was one of the cornerstones of President Trump's policies to bring in, really important that he continues with that and we stay on the path. And I think that what he did in Iran was entirely necessary. So the pain will be worth the gain, but it will be a lot of speed bumps and a lot of volatility.
Mitch Feierstein, thank you. And actually, thank you for explaining that so well. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And following the breaking news that President Trump is replacing Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, President Trump intends to name Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin as Secretary of Homeland Security. In a Truth Social post, the president says, quote, "The current Secretary, Kristi Noem, who has served us well and has had numerous and spectacular results, especially on the border, will be moving to be Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas, our new security initiative in the Western Hemisphere that we are announcing on Saturday in Doral, Florida. I thank Kristi for her service at Homeland," end quote. Earlier today, Secretary Noem spoke but did not address the news. She took to X to thank the president for her new position. We did hear from Senator Mullin.
When I go into this position, yes, I'm a Republican, yes, I'm conservative. But Department of Homeland Security is to keep everybody, regardless if you support me, if you don't support me, regardless of what your thoughts are. I'm here to enforce the policies that Congress passed, and right now I'm part of it, but once I make that transition, my focus is to keep the homeland secure. That's going to be my focus, and we're super excited about this opportunity.
The president says this change goes into effect on March 31st. Noem will be the first cabinet member to leave this administration. Senator Mullin will need to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. So what happens to Senator Mullin's seat? Oklahoma state law says the governor will appoint a replacement until a special election is held. That appointee serves temporarily until a successor is elected. Coming up, oops, she did it again. Singer Britney Spears is making headlines. Find out why when the record continues.
Donald Trump's second presidency is changing America. Now you need to watch Rob Schmidt tonight on President Trump's next big move. Then tune into Rob Finnerty taking on Trump's critics. President Trump says he watches Newsmax. You should too. Download our Newsmax app to watch us anytime, anywhere. Millions are making the switch to Newsmax. Be one.
Doctors say having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care and pharmacy at home. Let me bring in Dr. McCullough to explain more.
Most people know when they're getting sick, but waiting to see a doctor is often too late.
So the key is having medicines before you need them.
Yes, and it includes doctor-prescribed medicines to treat common and serious issues like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, antibiotics, antivirals for flu, pneumonia, strep, ear and sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
So it is like having an urgent care at home.
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications and hospitalizations.
How do you know what to take?
Just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Great advice. I understand ordering is fast online, and we've put the website and $45 off code on the screen. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news. If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dry premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
Oops, she did it again. Last night, Britney Spears, widely known as the Princess of Pop, was arrested in Ventura County, California. According to law enforcement, Spears was arrested for driving under the influence. She was arrested around 9:30 p.m. Pacific time, taken to the hospital, have her blood drawn. About 6.5 hours later, at 3 a.m. Pacific time, Spears was booked by the sheriff's department at the jail. At 6 a.m. Pacific time, Spears was released from custody. Spears was alone when she was pulled over in Westlake Village near her home. Meanwhile, the House Oversight Committee has voted to subpoena U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi. The subpoena is part of the committee's investigation into the federal government's handling of the files related to disgraced financier and pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. If Bondi decides not to comply with the subpoena, she could face Congress voting to hold her in criminal contempt and then send a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. Of course, Bondi's in charge of the Department of Justice, and the decision whether to prosecute her for contempt of Congress should that happen would be hers. Former Attorney General Eric Holder found himself in that same position back in 2012. That is when Congress voted to hold him in contempt of Congress by a vote of 255 to 67. Obviously, Holder declined to prosecute himself. Last month, Bondi appeared before the House Judiciary Committee. During that hearing, Bondi faced multiple questions about the DOJ's handling of the Epstein files. Former federal prosecutor and former attorney for President Trump, Jim Trusty, joins me. So what do you think, Jim?
I think Brittany's in trouble.
I told you I wouldn't ask you about Brittany.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's an interesting scenario. I think we're kind of getting a little far ahead to figure out if there's going to be contempt and referrals and all that. I mean, I think there's.
Why was she subpoenaed?
Well,
why not just ask her? Did they ask her first?
Well, that I don't know. And of course, the subpoena for now, as I understand it, is for a closed-door session. So it's not absolute street theater at this point. Nancy Mace seems to be pretty sincere in terms of wanting to chase things down, no matter whose ox is getting gored. So I think we let it play out a little bit. There's time for some negotiation. There could be some middle ground short of the appearance. But if there is an appearance and it's behind closed doors, the big issue is, does the video get released 3 days later, which essentially makes it open door.
You know, I'm all for transparency. You know, there shouldn't be anything in the government. I don't care what it is. I will say this, though, is I don't think people, and maybe some members of Congress, realize the magnitude of the documents and data that they have to go through before it can be released. And, you know, it's done, you know, by, I think they have 500 people that they signed to do it. It's that large. And they're duplicate files. They have to figure out duplicate files. It's just not as easy as just, you know, dumping it on the internet.
No, that's very true. But, you know, the problem is what set that in motion, right? I mean, Attorney General Bondi had something on her desk and referred to it as the file. It was clearly woefully incomplete. And I think, you know, behind the scenes, the big question I have is, where was all this other stuff? You know, was the New York FBI or New York U.S. Attorney's Office sitting on it at her expense when she says we've looked at everything? And well,
I'd even back it up further, because, you know, we've had all these hearings and we've had all these people dragged before to be testify. I mean, we had the Clintons last week. But the real question for me is that there are several assistant United States attorneys and several FBI who knew about this for the last 10 years or so, or since whenever it was, 15 years. And, you know, they're the ones we should ask if they did their jobs. You know, I know if there's a crime there, because now the statute has run, but, you know, why wasn't the case properly, why weren't the cases properly prosecuted if they called for a prosecution?
Right. I mean, look, I'm suffering from Epstein fatigue probably more than others. I don't like the notion of prosecutors' files, no matter how big or small, being rummaged through by armchair prosecutors. That said, you know, I think there's a couple of issues. One is, how are these victims treated? Everybody loses track of the victims for the political points. You know, were these victims deprived of justice by prosecutors who didn't go forward for the wrong reasons? And also, was there something to, you know, which we're seeing kind of play out in the British model right now, is there something more to Epstein in terms of blackmail, extortion, you know, intelligence communities? Those are fair questions.
Those are fair questions, but then the prosecutors and the FBI who've been handling it should have been the ones who were investigating it. So that's why I would look at them, since the statute's run. But you talk about the victims. I mean, there are a lot of young girls and women who are victims, but there are also, in some ways. What's happening to people who just knew Jeffrey Epstein, hadn't committed a crime, are being tarnished. I mean, when Jeffrey Epstein was convicted in 2010, or he pled guilty to something, he got house arrest and a small amount of jail time, which is what you get for drunk driving. And it wasn't until 2019 when he was found, I think until he was charged by the feds, that everyone realized the magnitude of his client, all the people that knew him. But I don't think, I mean, there are a lot of people who didn't know that, but they're getting named because they knew him.
Yeah, well, and that's, to me, again, that's the central core of why we don't open up prosecutor files. I mean, we got used to it from special counsel because they write reports, so everybody gets to look at it. But generally, we don't sit there and rummage through it and have this kind of guilt by association of if your name is mentioned. And I'll tell you, a few of the things I've seen from those files are completely, like, immediately disregarded rumors. High-profile cases bring in high-profile craziness. You get bad tips, you get malicious tips, you get crazy people, they'll say things, and that ends up in a file, and people say, well, that counts. His name was mentioned. And it's completely unvetted bad information.
I agree with you, but then we go back to the prosecution and the FBI. Why didn't they do the right job? Or did they do the right job? And that's not, they're not the ones being investigated. Yeah. It's the names of people who popped up in this. Those are the ones being investigated. When it should be is how did our Justice Department handle this, whether it's the FBI or DOJ, all these years?
The answer to that, I think, is not public exposure. It's a serious law enforcement professional bipartisan approach. I know that sounds naive in today's world, but get people that are some gray heads, as I say, some people that have been in the criminal justice system that knows how investigations are supposed to work, to look at this, to interview people, to have some ability to subpoena folks and get those types of answers. Those are the things we learn from, not from just taking uncorroborated tips and running wild with them in the media.
But it seems pretty bad that these cases, a lot of these cases, you know, sort of sat in a prosecutor's file. I mean, I don't want to rummage through a prosecutor's file too, but when you hear of these things, and you know, and when they appear they should have been investigated back when they were within the statute, that's troubling to me.
That's fair. I mean, look, I'm not defending anybody in the prosecution process or the investigation. I'm just saying there's a lot of collateral damage that we don't normally have. And if we focused on the right things, which is answering your question and seeing how are these victims treated, were they ignored, were there problems? Look, and frankly, human trafficking cases are hard to put together. There may be explanations that are kind of boring and mundane, like I didn't have a cooperating witness or I didn't have this or that would affect it. So, you know, if you really want to know answers as to why injustice was perpetrated, I don't think this is the way. What we're seeing publicly is not really the way to expose it.
Well, it's not going away anytime soon, that's for sure. Jim Trusty, thank you.
Sure, good to see you.
Coming up, America has new weapons. That when the record continues.
You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us, we're different. We report the real news, no spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmidt tonight on Newsmax.
Hurry in for the March Floorbusters sale at Lumber Liquidators, now through March 17th. Discover yellow and black savings no other store can match. Waterproof vinyl flooring as low as 39 cents a square foot. Laminate flooring as low as 67 cents a square foot. Solid hardwood flooring as low as 79 cents a square foot. These prices are as low as floors can go. So don't wait. Sale ends March 17th. Shop nationwide or online at lumberliquidators.com.
So, here is a before of my stomach before Sono Bello, and this is after.
This year, don't just lose weight, lose stubborn fat and sagging extra skin permanently at Sono Bello.
I wanted the results of the tummy tuck, but not the downtime.
We've helped over 300,000 people transform.
Do you want that flat stomach? You go get that flat stomach.
Schedule your free, no-obligation consultation. Our flexible payment options make it easy to get started today. Call or go to sonobello.com right now.
Have you ever thought of getting a walk-in tub for you or someone you love? Now is a great time to take a look at getting a Safe Step walk-in tub.
With Safe Step's standard heated seat and new fast fill faucet, you can enjoy a nice warm bath up to 20% faster. And the convenient touchpad control is right at your fingertips.
Each tub comes standard with a dual hydrotherapy system. The 10 water jets can help increase mobility, relieve pain, boost energy, and improve sleep, while the MicroSoothe advanced air therapy system oxygenates and softens skin.
Safe Step walk-in tubs are built to maximize safety so you can stay in your home and enjoy the comforts of bathing again.
So call now for more information and a free no-obligation consultation.
When you call today, you'll also receive our limited time offer. Don't wait to enjoy safer bathing. Call 1-800-296-0431.
I'm Yalmer Heinrich. I'm in the nutritional business, primarily selling plant-derived minerals. Now, after being in this business for 43 years, owning a cancer hospital in Mexico, and associating with some of the most knowledgeable nutritional people in the world, I came to this conclusion. The world is sick due to a lack of minerals in our food, which is caused by a lack of minerals in topsoil. There is an incredible and proven nutritional product on the market that can overcome this problem. It's Immuno 150. This unusual food supplement contains 70 plant-derived minerals and 80 additional nutrients. There's nothing like it. Now watch the 3 videos on our website and place your order for what may be the best food supplement in the world. Now Immuno 150 is different, it's real, it's powerful, it's helped thousands, and we believe it enjoys the highest reorder rate in the industry. Thank you and God bless.
I wish I could just watch live sports at home for a great price.
Sling lets you do that. Sling lets you do that.
Choose and customize your channel lineup, or pause and watch for free. Sling lets you do that. Base package required.
A new American weapon is believed to be 20 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. This week, the military tested it. The weapon is called the Minuteman III. It is an intercontinental ballistic missile. It can carry nuclear warheads. The missile was tested at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. It was tested for its effectiveness. It was unarmed, but the Space Force says the missile reached its target in the Marshall Islands. The Minuteman III is not the only new weapon in America's arsenal. Some are being used right now against Iran. For the first time, for instance, the U.S. is using the Lucas attack drones. They're modeled after Iran's Shahed drone. These drones are considered to be low cost. What's the low cost? $35,000 each. Also making a debut on the battlefield, a new precision strike missile, or PRSM. These long-range missiles are highly accurate. They can hit targets as far away as 310 miles. And so, for reference, that's about the same distance from our nation's capital, North Carolina's Fort Bragg. That's not all. The U.S. Navy reportedly is deploying lasers. They are called Helios. Helios stands for High Energy Laser with Integrated Optical Dazzler and Surveillance. What do these lasers do? These lasers can instantly destroy or disable drones, missiles, and small boats. Former Special Presidential Envoy for Arms Control under President Trump and former NATO Assistant Secretary General for Defense Investment, Marshall Billingsley, joins me. Nice to talk to you again, sir.
It's good to see you, Greta.
So what do you think about the Minuteman III?
Well, the test that was conducted is actually a fairly normal affair that is done in order to ensure that the system remains reliable. However, I would say that the Minuteman III is aging and it's way past its life expectancy. And so the plan is to bring online a new intercontinental range ballistic missile called Sentinel. The problem with Sentinel is that it's way, way over budget. And they've discovered a number of unexpected problems with the missile silos and some other things. So it's complicated, but Minuteman III will eventually be phased out here.
Well, why do we need it? I realize it's a dangerous world, but it brings me, like, this week I read that France, which has 290 nuclear warheads, is now getting more. And I thought, just how many do you need to destroy the world or to make your point?
Well, you need enough to do 3 key tasks in terms of deterrence. The first is you have to be able to hold the dictator at risk, whether we're talking about Putin or Xi. Of course, China is racing in the nuclear field now, building up rapidly. Secondly, you need to be able to target the security apparatus that keeps the dictator in power and the warfighting machine. And then you have to also be able to hold at risk the military-industrial complex that fuels that war. If you do those 4 things, 3.5 things, that should be sufficient for deterrence. But there's a lot of math involved in terms of how many warheads are therefore required. You have to make calculations on the survivability of the systems, given that air defense and things like Golden Dome in the future are a here and now challenge. So that drives the numbers.
All right, so that drives the numbers. I get it. I mean, something very Oh, let me interrupt you for 1 second. President Trump is speaking. He's hosting the 2025 Major League Soccer Champions, Inter Miami CF, at the White House. Let's listen.
Champions, and we don't care about them today, right? Right, Duffy? But we have, most importantly, wonderful people that love our country. And before we begin, I think I will say a few words about what's going on with respect to our operation in the country of Iran. The United States military, together with the wonderful Israeli partners, continues to totally demolish the enemy far ahead of schedule and at levels that people have never seen before, actually. We're destroying more of Iran's missiles and drone capability every single hour, knocking them out like nobody thought was possible. As soon as they set off a missile, within 4 minutes, the launcher gets hit. They don't know what's happening. But we have the greatest military anywhere in the world. Their Navy is gone. 24 ships in 3 days. That's a lot of ships. Their anti-aircraft weapons are gone. So they have no air force. They have no air defense. All of their airplanes are gone. Their communications are gone. Missiles are gone. Launches are gone. About 60% and 64% respectively. Other than that, they're doing quite well. I said, what's left? But they're tough, and they want to fight. And they're calling, they're saying, how do we make a deal? I said, you're being a little bit late, and we want to fight now more than they do. We've had 47 years, depending on the way you count it, but 47 years of horror with this group. And, you know, when you see somebody walking down the street without their legs, without the arms, whose face is so badly affected and hurt, it mostly came from 95% Soleimani and Iran, and we, other presidents, lived with it. I didn't live with it. And so our people are doing a great job. Again, the greatest military anyone's seen. Thank you. Thank you very much. And yesterday, my administration announced decisive action to help keep down the oil prices, including offering political risk insurance for tankers transiting into the Gulf, as you know, pretty dangerous territory. Further action to reduce pressure on oil is imminent, and the oil seems to have pretty much stabilized. We had it very low, but I had to take this little detour if it's okay with everybody. Scott, it's okay with you? Scott's the one who has to put up with it. He said, you have to do this now? I said, I have to do it, Scott, right? But it's been very strong, and everybody, including Scott, everybody feels we had really no choice. They were going to hit us if we didn't hit them, because they're crazy. And in the long term, the actions we're taking will dramatically increase the stability of the region and oil prices and stock markets and everything else. You know, we set the all-time record in history with the Dow going to 50,000. So Dow is at 50,000. It was supposed to be maybe, if we were lucky, within, by the end of my presidency in 4 years. And we did it in my first year. We did the S&P 500. We did that in a period of less than a year. And that was even tougher than the Dow, they said, so it wasn't going to happen. But we have a great country. We have a country that's never done this well. We've had tremendous success in so many different ways. I built the military and rebuilt it in my first term, and we're using it more than I'd like to use it, to be honest with you. But when we used it, we found out it certainly did work. When we look at Venezuela, when we look at the first attack, Midnight Hammer, in Iran, which really set the stage for what we're doing right now. It's been pretty amazing. And I'm once again calling on all members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the military and the police, to lay down their arms. They're only going to be killed. And now is the time to stand up for the Iranian people and help take back your country. You're going to have a chance after all these years to take back your country. Accept immunity. We'll give you immunity. And we'll be giving you really the right side of history, because that's what it is. So you'll be perfectly safe with total immunity, or you'll face absolutely guaranteed death. And I don't want to see that. They don't want to see it either. We also urge Iranian diplomats around the world to request asylum and to help us shape a new and better Iran with great potential. It's a country with great potential. There's much better future for Iran. It's now beginning. It's going to be, I think, a great future. And the United States will ensure that whoever leads the country next, Iran will not threaten America or its neighbors, Israel, anybody. If you look at what happened, they had missiles aimed at all of these other countries, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, many others that weren't really involved very much, and they had missiles aimed. Well, they were aimed there long before this ever started. They were going after the entire Middle East, and then we came along. We blew up their party. So we have phenomenal people. I want to thank all of the people that have been involved. Marco, you've been doing a fantastic job. And you've been doing a fantastic job on a place called Cuba. Right? And A-Rod came in before. I said, hey, do you want to come up to a little award? He's gone to plenty of award ceremonies. Thank you, A-Rod. Big fan. But what's happening with Cuba is amazing. And we think that we want to finish this one first, but that will be just a question of time before you and a lot of unbelievable people are going to be going back to Cuba. Hopefully not to stay. We want you back, and we don't want to lose you. We don't want to make it so nice that they stay. But some people probably do want to stay. They love Cuba so much. I hear it all the time. That was another one that wasn't supposed to happen. Venezuela is going great. It's been stabilized. We have a wonderful person as your president-elect, Delcy Rodriguez, and she and her staff have been doing a fantastic job working with us. We're taking out hundreds of millions of barrels of oil, and it's going to Houston and various other places where it's being refined, and we're sending them back far more money than they've made in many years, and actually very shortly it'll be more money than they've ever made. And Venezuela is working. So we've had a lot of countries in places that truly love, you would say football, I would say soccer, but these are all countries that love football/soccer. And so I think the group likes it. And if you'd like, you could sit. I know I'm a very exciting speaker, but you can sit down if you'd like, okay? I'm looking at everybody standing. I'm saying, let's sit down. Because we're here to honor these great champions, and we want to take our time, right? Let's get to the reason that we're here, and it's a beautiful reason because we're honoring truly talented people. Today we're thrilled to host the 2025 MLS Cup champions, Inter Miami. Great job. And it's my distinct privilege to say what no American president has ever had the chance to say before. Welcome to the White House, Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi is, my son said, Dad, you know who's going to be there today? And I said, no, I got a lot of things going on. He said, Messi. I said, really? He's a big fan. He's a big fan of yours. He thinks you're just a great person, and I think you got to meet a little while. So
that, of course, is President Donald Trump. He's hosting the 2025 Major League Soccer champions Inter Miami CF at the White House. Made some headlines. He noted that in terms of the war, Israel and the United States are ahead of schedule. He says Iran is calling to make a deal, and he also talked about, the tankers that we discussed at the top of the show that have to get through the Strait of Hormuz to keep the oil prices down. He says that they're developing a political risk insurance, presumably so those tankers can move and keep the oil prices down. Meanwhile, we do have some breaking news. The House has rejected a war powers resolution. This resolution called for an end to military operations in Iran. Yesterday, the Senate also rejected a war powers resolution against the president's strikes on Iran. The votes were nearly down party lines. Only 2 senators crossed the line. They were Democrat Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. He voted against the measure, and Republican Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who voted to curb the president's powers. And in Israel, the first repatriation flights for Israelis stranded abroad have begun. These Israelis want to go home. But what about those wanting to leave the region? Senior correspondent John Huddy joins me from Tel Aviv, where it is 11:45 p.m. John?
Yeah, and Greta, actually, people still are being encouraged, Americans or others that are in the country, to go to the Taba crossing, basically the southern Israel crossing, where Eilat, then the southern city of Eilat, then hits the border with Egypt, and you can cross into Taba. That's how I got, as I was telling you earlier in the week, that's how I got into the country, flying from Miami through Heathrow to Cairo, Cairo to Sharm el-Sheikh to Taba, and then in here. It was a hop, a skip, and a jump, but I made it, so they're encouraging people to use that route. I'm also hearing that possibly the land route going to Amman, Jordan, King Allenby crossing, King Hussein crossing is definitely open. You can go through there to get to Queen Alia Airport. The question is, are there consistent flights? And that remains, a question at this point. But Greta, I want to also talk about some breaking news. As you may have seen earlier, we had an incoming missile barrage. We captured some of that, the incoming, basically, barrage of missiles, and also what appeared to be cluster munitions. These missiles that have been fired by the Iranians have these cluster munitions, and that's caused a lot of the damage. Unclear if there was any damage caused by this particular barrage. We also saw some of the interceptions as well. But that said, speaking of El Al repatriation flights, there were a couple flights that were coming in. But before this last salvo, before this last barrage, we actually saw one of those passenger jets coming in. And then as it was descending, then it made a hard turn to the right and went back out over the Mediterranean. So it's questionable whether they were told to abort because of this potential incoming barrage. But we have seen, despite what happened this evening, we have seen a noticeable decrease in the number of these attacks, including the simultaneous coordination between the Iranians and Hezbollah. That has been happening over the last couple of days as well, but really in large part because of the air superiority that both Israel and the United States has over Tehran, knocking out 80% of Iran's weapon systems, missile defense systems, and also 60% of its missile barrage and launching capabilities. On that note, as far as the historic and unprecedented coordination, I talked to Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani of the IDF earlier today, who talked about the cooperation and the ongoing efforts. Here's in part, Greta, what he told me. Listen.
We've been able in the first days of this operation to remove the layers of aerial defense systems, but more importantly, remove their offensive capabilities, missile stockpiles, and most importantly, the missile launchers. They have a bottleneck right now, and they're having a hard time firing missiles. It's not a random thing. This is a result of the success of the Israeli-American operations. We've never had something like this in our history, and from what I'm hearing from my American counterparts, they haven't had this type of intimate coordination. That is really an Israeli-American operation, but also Israeli-American technology that's been built for years together is dominating Iranian skies, Iranian technology, and Iranian military personnel.
Yeah, and that technology includes Rafael Advanced Defense Systems here in Israel, coordinating with Raytheon, and also Elbit Systems, which is another defense contractor in close coordination with Lockheed Martin. That's been going on for years, and that is what we're seeing right now, the ongoing efforts that we're seeing in the coordination between the United States and Israel in Tehran. Greta.
John Huddy in Tel Aviv, thank you. Coming up, who's going to be the next leader of Iran? President Trump has his idea. That one, the record continues.
If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
As a neurologist, my patients are often concerned with age-related memory decline. I recommend Cunol Brain Health with 2 powerful, high-absorption ingredients clinically shown to improve memory, focus, attention, and more. Cunol, the brand I trust.
No way this all fits.
Watch me.
Oh, we're watching, Gary. They're right. We need WeatherTech.
I thought they only make floor liners and cargo liners.
Really, Gary?
Really, Gary? Who do you think made the seat protector, side window deflectors, no drill mud flaps?
And the cup foam.
And I just ordered WeatherTech's newest products. Ta-da!
Hitch Basket makes for easy loading of heavy and bulky gear and increased storage capacity with a roof basket up top. Buy American at WT.com.
WeatherTech for the win.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
People always ask, why Patriot Gold Group? With over 10,000 clients to date and over $1 billion in transactions, not a single complaint on the Better Business Bureau. Consumer Affairs top rated for 9 years in a row. Over 2,000 5-star reviews. The only company nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the no fee for life IRA. Gold is up 80% in the last 28 months, 275% since Lehman Brothers collapsed. We are patriots protecting patriots. Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 888-528-4290 before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer 9 years in a row. Call now, 888-528-4290.
What are the next steps in Iran? The supreme leader and dozens of other senior Iranian officials are dead. So many are asking what the end goal of this war is. Today, in a telephone interview, President Trump told Reuters that the U.S. will have a role in choosing Iran's next leader. The president said, quote, "We want to be involved in the process of choosing the person who's going to lead Iran into the future. We do not have to go back every 5 years and do this again and again. Somebody that is going to be great for the people, great for the country," end quote. President Trump added that the Ayatollah's son, Mojtaba, is an unlikely choice to be the next leader. The president also told Reuters that he backs the Kurds launching an offensive in Iran. So who are the Kurds? They do not have a nation. They live in Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria. The Kurds in the fight against ISIS were key American allies. Multiple reports say the Kurds are now backed by the CIA. Coming up, could the United States or Iran have a new tool for cyber warfare? It's nuts. That when the record continues.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.
Pop up the volume.
Go ahead. Crank the volume. We got you. USPS has increased daily package processing capacity by 46% in the past 5 years. And with USPS Ground Advantage, your packages stay in our secure network, dock to door, nationwide. For full visibility, near real-time tracking, affordable pricing, for peace of mind. USPS Ground Advantage.
For pain in multiple spots like here, here, or here, Salon Pass patches stick firmly and remove comfortably once your pain is gone. Salon Pass. It's good medicine.
Satellite internet that's fast, reliable, and installed by professionals. For work, for play, for every day. Available anywhere you call home. Visit Viasat.com/internet now or call 833-8Viasat to sign up today.
Instagram teen accounts with automatic protections.
Bad news, Bulldogs. Sidelined for the season.
Limits on who can contact teens.
Ouch!
How are we gonna win without you? And content settings now inspired by 13+ movie ratings.
Hey, Slater, we're gonna win this one for you, bud.
You up for this? Instagram teen accounts with automatic protections.
The way you do anything is the way you do everything. Honor your word, shatter expectations, and give generously. These are the principles that built the finest, most functional, slim wallet in the world. Carry a proof wallet and be reminded of your pursuit of excellence every single day.
I'm Yalmer Heinrich. I'm in the nutritional business, primarily selling plant-derived minerals. Now, after being in this business for 43 years, owning a cancer hospital in Mexico, and associating with some of the most knowledgeable nutritional people in the world, I came to this conclusion. The world is sick due to a lack of minerals in our food, which is caused by a lack of minerals in topsoil. There is an incredible and proven nutritional product on the market that can overcome this problem. It's Immuno 150. This unusual food supplement contains 70 plant-derived minerals and 80 additional nutrients. There's nothing like it. Now watch the 3 videos on our website and place your order for what may be the best food supplement in the world. Now Immuno 150 is different, it's real, it's powerful, it's helped thousands, and we believe it enjoys the highest reorder rate in the industry. Thank you and God bless.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
Sponsored by Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, the health of fresh food with the convenience of kibble. Visit drmartypets.com/TV.
Medina County in Ohio suffered a big outage last month. Internet and phones all went offline. After investigating it, officials identified the bad actor.
Of all things, it was actually a squirrel. A squirrel had made a nest inside of our fiber backbone, had chewed through the lines, and took the entire county down. There's a significant amount of work that had to occur over the weekend to get us all back online. So we apologize for the inconvenience. It's hard to make this stuff up. That's what happened.
One squirrel took the entire county down. Believe it or not, this is a common problem. The most recent data from 2023 shows squirrels were the leading cause of power outages in the Midwest, and they are the 3rd leading cause of outages for the entire nation. That is according to the American Power Association. The only things that caused more outages were equipment and trees. Thank you for watching. Ed Henry and The Big Take is next. Stay with Newsmax.